welcome back. This is my Halloween What the Hell Is This? And I chose a film which I thought would be fun to do because it was a bad film that I always thought was hilariously bad. Then I rewatched it this time and it was painfully bad. So I kind of shot myself in the foot because I have not watched this film, I know, for a good 18 years, so my memory of it is pretty vague. So it's The Haunting by Jan de Bont. It's a remake Haunting. Oh boy, my memory of this film was really off compared to its reality. I mean, for some reason I thought Owen Wilson gets killed early on, and it turns out he lasts for 2/3 of the film, and I'm sure he would have rather been killed off earlier. Now this is a bad film. This is a terrible film. I mean, when I first saw it, I'd not read the book. I'd seen the original film, but I'd not read the book. Since seeing it, I have read the book, and the book's better than any of the film versions. The book's far superior to the film versions. Even The Haunting of Robert Wise, I like it as a film, but I don't think it's amazing. I think it's well made, but I like the book more. The book just feels more human into the characters more. It is a haunting film, haunting story, and I think the book, because Shirley Jackson basically wrote it, just gets you more. The haunting film with Robert Wise feels a very good adaptation of a book without being fully the book. It's the best you can do transferring mediums, I think. But I would say, if you're interested in a story, read the book. The book's best. The book's much better than the films. But for God's sake, avoid this one. This one. I mean, I think in Netflix have done an adaptation by Mike Flanagan recently, but this is the one who's like, okay, whatever you do not do what they did here. Now, there are plenty of problems, but the main problem in this film is the script. The script's the problem, because originally it was going to be Spielberg and Stephen King collaborating on an adaptation of The Haunting. That didn't work out, and Stephen King went on to use some of the material in a book he'd written. I can't remember the title of the book. So Spielberg had The Haunting, and still had the desire to do a remake of it or do a new adaptation of the book. So David Self was brought in to write an adaptation. At a certain point, Spielberg moved on and decided he didn't want to do it. Probably when he read the script and probably thought, this is not for me. This is... I don't know exactly when he left, but it feels like there's bits of Spielberg in there from that period, but it also feels like it's done in ways that he would be too smart to actually do. Like, no matter what you say about Spielberg, there's certain things he's too smart to do with films that he knows it's not a good idea to do that stuff. So he left, and he switched projects with Jan de Bont, because Jan de Bont was going to do Minority Report, and Spielberg switched with him and then rewrote Minority Report to be what he wanted it to be, which for me is one of his weirder films. But he switched up with Jan de Bont. Jan de Bont got The Haunting, for which he was completely wrong for. He had all the wrong instincts. Now, Jan de Bont as a director has the problem that you get when you get someone who comes up from another field, where he's good at certain things, but he's things that he doesn't know how to do, that you need other people to fill in for. So in Speed, he had a really good idea for a script, and he had a producer who could fill in the gaps with other people, so he could make sure it's shot well. Jan de Bont was a cinematographer. He could make sure it's shot well with a lot of energy, and then edit it well, because they know what to shoot for. Because cinematographers, even though they're not the editors, their job, apart from technically lighting everything, is to make sure the shots have a certain cohesion, intercut properly, and they're giving the director options for editing. So they're actually in charge of the photography altogether. Now, it depends from director to director how much in charge they are. Some directors give the DPs a lot of sway in the choosing shots. Other ones are pretty much choosing shots themselves. It depends. And De Bont worked with a lot of directors. He worked with some really good directors like Paul Verhoeven and John McTiernan, who could actually do a lot of elegant shots and could compose elegant shots with him. And it's something he never lost, even though when he was doing action films, a lot of the shots looked great because De Bont knew how to shoot that stuff. Even in a film like this, there are still some really good shots in it. But he did not really develop these films. He was brought in to shoot them and make sure the visuals were good so that the editor had a lot of good material to work with. He was not a person who worked on the scripts. And that became a problem pretty early on because he got lucky with Speed. Twister was one of those films that worked despite its script because Michael Crichton wrote the script. Then Joss Whedon came in and rewrote it for the actors. And it's not a film with, great character work or great invention, but it works visually as from one set piece to the next. And it's still enjoyable, silly film. It's not a great film, but I've watched Twister quite a few times. I've enjoyed it. It's silly. It's ridiculous. But it's still enjoyable. It's a B movie with a B movie budget. That's what it is. But then after that, that's when he got in trouble. He made Speed 2. And in Speed 2, he had the central idea of what it was going to be, which is a boat, with a bomb in a boat, which had been done already with Juggernaut, and Juggernaut was really good. But in this one, he was in charge of Speed 2, so he got to ring the writers. The producers of the first film were not involved. The writers of the first film were not involved. And they've stressed on the commentary we had nothing to do with Speed 2. The commentary for Speed. We had nothing. We had contractual credits from the first one that had to put on. That's a film where Keanu Reeves just didn't do the second one because he read the script. It was a film where the studio should have just said, no, we're not doing this script. We're just not doing it. Because the script didn't work. And no matter how many visual things he tried to do, the script wasn't working. So it's a weird film. We can watch sections of it and its bits are well put together. But you put it all together, the script is so incoherent that it gets in the way of the film. And it's a terrible comedy because De Bont doesn't do comedy well. And it's just a mess. And it's a sign of, okay, this guy needs writers to lock him down and keep him on track. Well, they gave him a script worse than Speed 2 for this one. Now, technically this film is better than Speed 2, but it's still a disaster. It's still awful. But it's just a weird one. It's like, no matter who you gave the script to as director, the director was dead in the water. There was no way to get through this script and survive it and look good. The script was terrible. It was a script that should have been thrown out. So, the people involved, the people who are genuinely at fault for this film, ultimately are the producers, who did not just say, let's start again. Let's get rid of this, let's start again. Because this, whatever we've got here, this is not what the book was, and it's not what will work as a film. So that's the main problem. The main problem here was the script. Even though the director had problems, and he could not come in and actually take control of the script and make it work. That's why I think De Bont has not directed since 2002. See, this next film after that was a Tomb Raider film, which basically means he was going from film to film, action movie to action movie, and trying to impose some sense onto something that wasn't his. And it doesn't work that way. So his big weakness, which is different from someone like McTiernan or James Cameron or Paul Verhoeven, they developed the scripts of their films as they went. They actually put the work in doing developing scripts. Like McTiernan basically said that you never get any scripts that come in, they're never ready to go. You always have to start developing them and getting them working for something you can do. And I don't think the Bond knew how to do that. So that's why I think his career collapse is like it was something he had never been taught because he was just involved with the photography. And here he had a script that was terrible. Now he might have thought that he could have done something with it. And there are nice shots in it. Especially, I watched it with my projector. So you can see a lot of the shots. There's lots of nice stuff with the design of the house. The design of the house is overdone, but it's shot well. It nothing to do with anyone ever built. And the weird thing is, the exteriors and the interiors of this house do not feel like they're in the same place. Like, at all, ever. You feel you're going from one location to the other. You don't feel that the interiors are anything to do with what the house looks like outside. And he does lots of pannings and moving behind actors and doing all this stuff, trying to make it as professional as possible. And cut back and forward between actors and what they're seeing, things. All of that's done professionally. I mean, this is not an awful film because of it's shoddily shot. It's an incompetent film because of how terrible the writing is. And the actors do the best they can, but they're getting dialogue that's terrible. They're getting motivations that's terrible. I mean, the lead actor is Lily Taylor as Eleanor, and she's a really good actress. You get put in a film, she's going to be good. Even in this film, she's good, but she's been given nothing to do in this film. Then you get Catherine Zeta-Jones, who looks uncomfortable playing Theo, who's the bisexual character who's a friend of Eleanor's as they go through the horrors. They don't know each other at the start, but then they become friends. But there's tension between them. She looks uncomfortable. She's given all these absurd lines and she's given all these weird, these kind of overdone clothes. She's a clothes horse character, basically. But there's nothing there that as an actor can actually do much with because it's a part that's been written to be unsayable, with lines that are unsayable. And it's obviously she's got a director who's interested in the craftsmanship of what he's shooting rather than the character stuff. Which again was why the Bond needs a good writer, because he cannot get in with the actors to actually make the acting good if there's nothing there. Liam Neeson looks awkward as hell as the guy who does the experiment. He's a character who's kind of villainous, who's doing he's doing a study that he's not telling the people what it's really about, which is very different from the book, where the characters try to work out the haunting of the house, and he's doing his experiments and they get out of control. This one, he's actually shifting, and he's trying to study fear in this scary place, but it's so sketchily worked out, and he looks awkward and uncomfortable in the part. He just looks uncomfortable. Like, it looks like he doesn't know who his character is at all. And then Luke Wilson comes in and is actually it's Owen Wilson, sorry, not Luke Wilson. Owen Wilson comes in. He's playing a character called Luke, which is very confusing, if you know who his brother is. And he's playing a character who's the other person who's a bit strange, and he's given nothing to do. And he's basically told to be himself and say weird things. And he's there, but he's not really there. It's the kind of thing is, like, the funny thing is, he's in it and Todd Field's in it, who Todd Field was just come off Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut and was going to make some films. Owen Wilson was coming off doing Armageddon, but it was also, he'd written Bottle Rocket and was starring it. And he's about to do Rushmore and do all these Wes Anderson things. So you had people in this that were off doing better films running about at the same time. Well, they're getting paid for this film. Todd Field was also in Twister, so obviously he was brought in because Jan de Bont liked him. So you've got all this talent who are there, but they're awkward because they aren't being given much to work with. And they've got a script that doesn't make sense. I mean, one of the reasons Liam Neeson looks uncomfortable is his motivation's vague as hell throughout. And you're never quite sure when he's doing things, when he's not. I don't think even he's sure, which is a problem, because the motivation of when he's doing things, when he's not, is very murky. And not in a good way, not in a way that the people involved know but the audience doesn't. It's much more like the people involved don't seem to know either what the hell's going on. And it's not like a ghost, a well-written ghost story. There's ambiguities of what's going on that frighten the characters. And this one is ambiguity of what the characters are doing to other characters. They're so ambiguous that I'm not sure people involved know what they are. And the horror stuff that gets thrown on doesn't make any sense. And it's like just a lot of CGI thrown at you. But before the CGI gets thrown at you, you get lots of over-the-top design. You can always tell the film's in trouble when they over-the-top design it. When they know the script is basic or not very good. In this film, they're trying to make the house look scary as hell by suggesting it's been built like by a madman. But it's so over-designed. It's inspired by Citizen Kane, obviously, but it's what we mix Citizen Kane with H.G. Geiger and a bunch of other weird European references. So it's a very European film interior that doesn't feel very American. And it's like, why would anyone ever come to this house? Why do you just burn it down? Or why do you just not just avoid it? What's might be the backstory of the house, everyone avoids it. But it's like, why would anyone build this anyway and think anyone would come to it? It doesn't make sense as a house in the way that you'd make someone could have built this house that could have been slightly off, and that could be the creepiest part. No, this is designed so that why would anyone design this? So you've got that problem. And you've also got a script that makes no sense. It's all, instead of being ambiguity to the house, well, that's why I've been blown, because the house isn't ambiguous. It's just campy over the top. Then you've got a plot which is a bit that's, instead of being about the house and what the haunting is, it's about this guy who had kidnapped children from his mines. They were all in the house, their ghosts were all in the house, and Eleanor has to save them. Which is not what the book's about, or not what the original film's about at all. And it just means she walks around a lot, trying to save the children, looking mad. You've got all these CGI ghosts floating around, and they all look fake as hell and weird. And it's just at a certain point, they've just thrown ghosts at you constantly. And the script does no favours to anybody. So no matter what they try to do, they try to do it with physical peril, like try to climb these steps that are unsteady at some point. That doesn't work, because it's just vague why they're climbing the steps in the first place. There's a death scene with Owen Wilson that's really unambiguous to the idea of the house not letting him leave. Rather than being scary, it's so obviously special effects at this point, it's not scary at all, it's just like special effects over the top thing. But the main thing is, as you're watching, it's just this melange of stupid motivations where the actors just look lost. It's like, why am I doing this? Why would anyone do this? Is probably the thing they're thinking every day. Why would anyone do this? And Lily Taylor's trying her best throughout this film to try and make it make sense. And it never does. And her character just seems stupid for a lot of it. And just seems like she isn't very bright at all and has been manipulated. Rather than the idea of being her trauma is haunting the house, and haunting the house is tied to her in some way, it becomes a thing about she's a descendant of this crazy guy, and all the weird thing about lockets and these weird statues coming to life and attacking people, or did they? And it's like every cheesy thing going on, and it ends up redemption from her as she sacrifices herself to save the children, let her ghosts go free, and damning the awful monster to hell, which is nothing like the book. It makes no sense in the film, and it makes no sense of the premise of the film with this haunted house. It just is such a stupid script. I mean, that's the only thing I can say is the script is so awful. It is one of the worst scripts I've ever seen adapted. In fact, it's based on such a good book is even more damning. But this is a terrible film. This is awful. This is mind-bogglingly bad and frustrating watching a lot of talent trying to make sense of something that's should have been just dumped. They should have just dumped that script and started again. Because, I mean, that's the big problem. Is everyone involved is competent in their own field. But if a director who's not really good at horror, doesn't understand horror so well, even though he's actually shot some horror stuff before, in this one he seems to throw out all his knowledge of it, and he's just trying to throw as much at the screen as possible to hide the fact that he knows that this project is damned. And there's no understanding that CGI isn't scary either. And when this film was made, everyone already knew that. So there was no excuse. It was like, they tried that with some horror films earlier. The CGI always looked wrong for horror. So it was like, don't do CGI in horror until it gets better. And this film just throws it at the screen and it's just terrible. So this is an awful film. This is just awful. But I tried to explain why the elements were awful, but it's just one of those things is like, just make sure you've actually planned it out before you've spent any money. Make sure you know where you're going. Because this is like what would happen if we did Poltergeist really badly. Because it wants to be Poltergeist. It doesn't want to be The Haunting, it wants to be Poltergeist. It's all the thing of Spielberg probably said, well, try and make it the Poltergeist then if we're not doing the book. And they took him literally, did everything that he did in Poltergeist, but did it much worse. Or even him and Tobe Hooper did. Because Tobe Hooper was a horror director who knew how to do horror. So even though I don't like Poltergeist, I can see why people like it. Because Tobe Hooper was in charge of that. And even though Spielberg had a big involvement in it, it was still Tobe Hooper who was there day to day. And he brought it all together. But it shares the same thing as Poltergeist is a ghost story, it's incoherent. So maybe that's what Spielberg brought to this. I don't know exactly what he brought to it, but he made sure he was the hell away from it well before release. Even though it's a DreamWorks film, it was like, I'm not the producer here, bye. Like, he could see this was a disaster. But the disaster was the actual material they were working with, because it was just so awful. So I'm sick of talking about this film now. It's such a bad film. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you do never watch this film. I hope this is a warning. Do not watch this film. You will feel you're going to hell. So that's me for now. Bye.